When I was making this kind of content, and I assume it's no different for guys like Nick, for guys like Ruslan, for guys like, and any other person who makes reaction videos on worldly things, on celebrities, on things of that nature, and then try to put a Christian perspective on it, is the very first thing is what's popping, what's got people's attention, what will people click on. That's the primary motivation. The primary motivation is what will people find interesting. Then secondary to that is how can I dig through this and see if I can find something Christian to say in here. And when the primary motivation is views, that means the primary motivation is money and fame. Point blank, period. I don't care what nobody want to say. That's just what it is. Why? Why don't we see any reactions from channels like these? And again, no offense to Nick. I like Nick. You know what I'm saying? But where are the reactions to sermons that you've watched and been moved by? Where are the reactions to teachings that you feel have really edified you? You're never going to see it. You're never going to get it. Why? Because the unsaved, spiritually immature sheeple that are just looking for something to distract themselves with aren't going to click on that video. They don't want to be edified. They don't want to be taught. They don't want to learn how to grow in the Lord. They just want something to distract them. They just want to feint Christianity. They want to pretend as if they're not in the world watching Sneeko and Destiny and Abba and Preach. And so, but they get to scratch that same itch by going to, it's Christian TMZ. It's Christian Destiny. That's all it is. To be fair, Nick has reacted to sermons. And look, I'm not saying that this is 100% of Nick's content or Ruslan's content. Or something started to not sit right with the content I was making, as well as the content that I was getting from bros like Nick and dudes like Ruslan and all that. It started to feel very superficial. It started to feel very vain. Not vain in terms of, exalting themselves, but just the content. It wasn't doing anything. And I realized it wasn't ever doing anything. Now, I'll say there are videos here and there, like the Halloween video, for instance, that he did, where you learn some real applicable, valuable information. But I realized the whole time I was just being entertained by someone who was producing content that didn't feel wicked. But it was scratching that same itch that used to get scratched when I would watch Playback or Abba and Preach. Those guys got too wicked for me. They have filthy mouths. They don't censor their videos. They don't ever talk about Jesus. And so content from dudes like Nick and Ruslan filled that void whilst, not having to feel heavily convicted by the Lord. And so that's the situation, man. That's the situation. It's no ill will, no bad. Look, I claimed it. I used to make that content. This is why I made this video, and this is why I had to say that initially. That's where I was. Because here's what it is. If Nick tries to go the route of just every piece of content serves, it moves someone to this end. Fear God and keep his commandments. That's the whole point of all of this. and or being given clear instruction on how to move more in the ways of righteousness. Because teaching someone how to move more in the ways of righteousness is more than just, right, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. Really, it's how to live, how to be a good person, how to be a good employee, how to be a good brother, how to be a good son, father, husband, how to be a good leader, a good friend. There are a lot of people who, for instance, there are a lot of Christians, for instance, who might fancy themselves all self-righteous and high and mighty because they're not committing adultery or whatever, but yet they borrow their neighbor's lawnmower and don't return it. Right? All the law is fulfilled in this: love your neighbor as yourself. Or when they return it dirty, empty. They use all the gas and now it's dirty. That's wicked. You know, they repented from porn and masturbation, but they keep showing up to work late. And so, yes, it's the big things, but it's also the little things. And so there are a lot of ways in which we can help the body, help one another to move more in righteousness and understand what it truly means to be like Christ. You know, there was a scene in the show The Chosen, and I'm not a fan of the show The Chosen because I think they take too many liberties with that show and changing things. But I did watch, I think it was at least the first 2 seasons. I don't know if I think I might have abandoned it on the 3rd season because it started to go too off the rails, if I'm not mistaken. But there's this one episode where everyone's looking for Jesus. And when they finally found him, you know what he was doing? Now, this is the same. By now, he's been performing miracles, healing people, casting out demons, all these things. But you know what they found him doing after they spent like half the episode looking for him? He was underneath some guy's like horse and buggy cart, fixing it. And you know, there are a lot of things I didn't like about The Chosen, but that was something I really liked. And I appreciate it even more now. Because that is real Christianity right there. That is real Christianity. And that's something that Jesus would have done. Jesus, for sure, would have seen someone in need like that, him being a carpenter, knowing how to fix some kind of a wooden vehicle like that. It don't matter if he was hungry or tired. Doesn't matter if he just finished ministering over here and was about to go minister over there. He took a second to help this stranger fix his cart. And so yeah, man. Yeah, I was in that same battle that Nick is talking about right here. I was in that same wrestling of like, I know that me reacting to this video is going to get a lot of views, but that's the reason I'm doing it, because it's going to get a lot of views. It's going to make money. If I put out 1 to 2 of these a day, I'll be making 6 figures a year and living comfortably. I can continue to drive my expensive car. I can continue to. But I realized that the love of money is the root of all evil. You cannot serve God and money. And, you know, it's putting vain and wicked things in front of people's eyes. It's putting vain and wicked things in front of my eyes. It's hurting me spiritually, having to sit through this content and listen to it and react to it. Because before Nick can give you the censored version of his take on something wicked like, you know, a Lil Nas X music video, before he can give you the censored take on it, you know what he has to do? He has to watch the Lil Nas X video. Uncensored, fully blasphemous, fully wicked, fully vile, fully vulgar. It's not even good for him. That's why I had to walk away from it. And that's why I had to completely change my life, completely downsize, sell my expensive car, move out of my big house into a humble, small house in the country. Maybe being a full-time Christian YouTuber is just not feasible. Maybe to be a Christian YouTuber, 9 out of 10 times you are going to have to work a regular job. Because now it's not to say that a ministry can't get to the point where your ministry is bringing in all the money to feed you and your family, right? But if it's a situation where you're trying your best to make content pleasing to God that edifies the body, and it's not bringing in enough money to make ends meet, got to get a job. You know, it's a position that I found myself in personally. You know, I went from being a YouTuber where I had companies wanting to offer me 5-figure checks for a sponsorship. Yeah, that was the right number. 5-figure checks for a sponsorship, to now, you know, being in a place where your boy's sending out job applications. It's hard to walk away from that money, man. It's hard to walk away from that money, to humble yourself, to trust God. It's difficult. But I believe it yields the best fruits. And at the end of the day, you're going to be accountable to God. You know what I'm saying? Like what Nick was saying, you're going to be brought before God, and you have to account for every word and every action and every deed. And God knows the motivation behind why you do everything. You can't BS God. You can't lie to God. You can't dress it up with God. He knows exactly why you do something. You know, we can tell ourselves a nice story. We can tell YouTube and our audiences a nice story. But end of the day, God knows your motives behind why you do something. And I was able to be honest with myself and know that the motive behind making that kind of content was not primarily serving God or edifying the body of Christ or any of that. It was to make money. It was to get views. It was to grow a subscriber count. And really, the fact that it was Christian was more for me than anybody else. It was more to tell myself that I'm doing the work of God.